At 4:40 a.m., the still waters of Tamriuk Bay were suddenly broken by a whisper, not from a missile or submarine, but from a drone no larger than a suitcase. In the darkness, a small, low-cost machine built from off-the-shelf parts was about to challenge one of the most advanced warships in the region, a vessel worth $60 million. What happened next would stun military analysts around the world. Within minutes, that multi-million-dollar corvette, armed with cruise missiles and cutting-edge defenses, was left blind and crippled, taken down by a weapon that cost less than a smartphone. How could a $1,000 drone outsmart a ship designed to survive modern warfare? Was this just a lucky strike, or proof that the future of combat belongs to low-cost innovation and artificial intelligence? This is the story of how technology, strategy, and precision changed naval warfare forever. At first light on October 3rd, 2025, a quiet inlet in the Sea of Azov became the stage for one of the most striking demonstrations of modern warfare. Tamriuk Bay, a place once known only for its fishing boats and oil terminals, witnessed an operation that would echo through military academies and defense reports for years to come. The mission's objective was simple but daring: disable a Russian Bayan-M-class corvette valued at roughly $60 million. This warship, with its sleek lines and advanced electronic systems, was built for one purpose: power projection. At 243 feet long, it carried 8 vertical launch cells, each loaded with a 3M14 Kalibr cruise missile.
Understood.
Every missile carried a 450-kilogram warhead capable of striking targets more than 1,200 kilometers away. From the perspective of Ukrainian defense planners, such a vessel was not just a threat. It was a mobile strike platform capable of hitting cities, energy grids, and supply hubs far beyond the front. The intelligence window. To neutralize that threat, Ukraine's Defense Intelligence Directorate initiated a 4-day surveillance campaign that combined traditional reconnaissance with advanced digital tools. Military analysts often say modern warfare is won not on the battlefield, but in the data collected before it. This operation was proof of that. High-resolution satellite imagery from commercial Maxar satellites provided the first clues. From orbit, analysts could pinpoint the corvette's exact position, down to its mooring line shadows on the water. But satellite data alone wasn't enough. Timing was everything. To monitor the ship's daily rhythm, a Bayraktar TB2 drone was deployed to loiter at 20,000 feet. The TB2's optical sensors captured continuous footage, revealing when the ship left port, how long it patrolled, and where it refueled. After 96 hours of observation, one detail stood out. The Buoyan M consistently operated without escort vessels inside Tamriuk Bay. It was a subtle but significant deviation from Russian naval protocol. Typically, high-value ships are accompanied by at least one frigate or air defense vessel. Here, however, routine and overconfidence had set in. Believing the bay to be shielded from attack, the ship's crew had unknowingly created a vulnerability. It was the kind of opportunity that could not be ignored, the weapon of choice. For this operation, brute force was not an option. Launching anti-ship missiles would be costly and detectable, while traditional naval assaults risked escalation. What Ukraine needed was precision and innovation. Enter the UJ-26 Bober, a domestically developed unmanned aerial vehicle designed for stealth rather than speed. Lightweight, small, and agile, it weighed barely 5 kilograms, roughly the size of a seagull. Its body was crafted from composite materials that absorbed radar waves, giving it a cross-section smaller than a dinner plate. On radar screens, the Bober would appear as nothing more than background clutter, a ghost on the sea, flying at an altitude of just 12 meters and traveling around 120 kilometers per hour. It was programmed to hug the curvature of the Earth, slipping beneath the radar horizon of surface ships. This flight pattern was not improvised. It was calculated meticulously. At that height, even the corvette's powerful MR-352 positive ME-1 radar, capable of tracking aircraft up to 150 kilometers away, would fail to detect it until it was already too close to respond. Yet flying that low over the open sea presented a new problem. Control. Radio signals, like radar, travel in straight lines. Once the Earth's curve broke the line of sight, the drone would lose communication. The solution was ingenious. Ukrainian engineers employed a two-drone relay system. A secondary drone, the mother unit, orbited high above at nearly 5 kilometers altitude. Acting as a relay platform, it received encrypted signals via a Starlink satellite connection and transmitted them downward to the low-flying attacker. This method ensured real-time control and feedback, even hundreds of kilometers away from the operator's ground station. It was a system that combined global commercial infrastructure, national innovation, and battlefield necessity, the hallmark of modern asymmetric warfare. Preparation and precision. In a secure location somewhere inside Ukrainian-controlled territory, a small team of specialists monitored every stage of the mission. Their setup resembled something out of a science fiction film. Multiple screens displaying telemetry data, live feeds from the drone's thermal camera, and encrypted communication lines linking them to intelligence analysts. The mission's objective was not to sink the corvette outright. That would have required heavier ordnance and risked escalation. Instead, the goal was surgical, to blind the ship. Destroying the radar array would disable the corvette's ability to detect or defend itself. Without radar, its advanced AK-630M2 Duet close-in weapon systems could not automatically track targets, and its electronic warfare suite, the TK-25, would be reduced to guesswork. The warship would remain afloat, but effectively useless. The Bobr was equipped with a specially designed 2-pound fragmentation charge, small, precise, and deadly to delicate electronics. Its proximity fuse was programmed to detonate just before impact, releasing a cone of shrapnel that would shred the radar's sensitive components without tearing apart the ship's structure. Every element of the operation was calculated to maximize efficiency and minimize collateral damage. The night before. As the final night of preparation unfolded, weather data streamed in from civilian and military sources. Wind speeds, humidity, and wave height were analyzed to predict how the drone's low-altitude flight would behave. Tamriuk Bay, known for its shallow waters and frequent morning fog, offered both risk and advantage. The mist could obscure optical detection, but also interfere with the drone's sensors. By midnight, conditions were deemed optimal. The operation was greenlit. In the control room, one operator, a young officer trained in UAV warfare, adjusted his headset and took manual control. The first Bobr launched silently from a makeshift coastal ramp, its small electric motor almost inaudible. The second, the relay drone, climbed vertically into the night sky, stabilizing at altitude. Their paths formed an invisible corridor through which data and commands flowed continuously. 30 miles from the target, the Bobr's thermal camera began to pick up faint heat signatures, engines idling, the metallic glow of exhaust ducts reflecting off calm water. The corvette was exactly where satellite images had predicted. The operator switched to optical mode, confirming identification. Every second of delay risked exposure. A moment of balance. As the drone closed the distance, its altitude stabilized at 12 meters, just low enough to remain undetected, yet high enough to avoid the sea's turbulence. The faint hum of its motor merged with the wind. In the dim glow of the control screens, the operator's heart rate monitor ticked upward. $1,000 worth of carbon fiber and circuitry was now flying into the heart of a multi-million-dollar defense system. The outcome of months of design, days of observation, and minutes of flawless execution would hinge on the next few seconds. And somewhere in the darkness above Tamriuk Bay, the Bobr glided silently toward its target, unseen, unheard, and unstoppable. The attack had not yet begun, but the course of modern naval warfare had already changed. At precisely 4:42 a.m., the UJ-26 Bobr drone entered the outer limits of Tamriuk Bay. To anyone on the surface, it was invisible, a black silhouette skimming no more than 12 meters above the waves, guided only by thermal sensors and the steady hum of its electric motor. The air was cold, the sea still, and the corvette's radar mast glowed faintly in infrared, like a beacon in the dark. The mission plan was simple in theory, but excruciatingly difficult in execution. Strike the ship's primary radar, then disable its defenses before it could respond. The key was timing. Every second mattered. Below the radar horizon, the drone's flight path was calculated to exploit a fundamental law of physics, the curvature of the Earth. A ship's radar cannot see below the line of sight, meaning that objects flying very low over water remain invisible until they are already dangerously close. For the Bayou-M, that blind zone extended to roughly 40 kilometers. At the drone's altitude of just 12 meters, its radar signature was practically non-existent. On the Corvette's MR-352 positive ME1 display, the sea clutter, waves, birds, temperature variations appeared far stronger than a 5-kilogram carbon fiber aircraft. The ship's sensors scanned, but found nothing unusual. Meanwhile, 1,000 kilometers away, in a dimly lit control center, the Ukrainian operator guided the Bober by satellite link through a dual drone relay system. A secondary drone hovered far above, acting as a data bridge. Commands were transmitted from the operator to Starlink satellites, then down to the relay drone, and finally to the low-flying attacker. The connection was stable, encrypted, and near real-time, a marvel of improvised engineering. On the monitor, the operator could see the Corvette's glowing exhaust plumes through the thermal camera. The target was locked. The final approach began. The first strike. At 4:45 a.m., the stillness of Tamriuk Bay was broken. The first sign of trouble on the Bayou-M didn't come from its sophisticated radar, but from a distant Russian reconnaissance drone, an Orlan 10, flying high overhead. Its operator spotted something unusual on the surface, a faint heat trace moving fast toward the Corvette. Within seconds, a warning crackled over the radio. Unidentified low contact, bearing 146, speed approximately 100 kilometers per hour. On the bridge, the captain's instincts took over. He ordered an emergency acceleration to top speed, 25 knots, and began evasive maneuvers. The ship veered sharply, slicing across its own wake in a zigzag pattern. This was a textbook anti-torpedo maneuver, but against a UAV guided by artificial intelligence, it offered little protection. The Corvette's TK-25 electronic warfare suite was immediately activated. A row of indicator lights turned green as powerful jamming frequencies flooded the air. The crew expected the signal to disrupt any incoming guidance systems, but this time, the target didn't rely on local radio waves. The Bober's control link came from above, far beyond the jamming envelope. The drone continued unimpeded. On the operator's screen, the radar mast grew larger with each passing second. When the ship's radar finally detected the approaching object, it was too late for automated defense. The ship's twin AK-630M2 duet cannons spun up, but without proper radar lock, they couldn't track the target accurately. At 4:49 a.m., the Bober's onboard proximity fuse armed itself. Using its internal AI-assisted targeting module, it identified the thermal outline of the MR-352 radar and locked on. Then, milliseconds before impact, the fragmentation charge detonated. A flash of orange illuminated the fog, followed by a sharp metallic crack that echoed across the bay. The radar's delicate array shattered, sending pieces of antenna and wiring tumbling across the deck. The 3-ton radar assembly, its supporting structure weakened, collapsed onto the forward superstructure. The Corvette was now blind. The moment of confusion. For several seconds, the crew didn't understand what had happened. The bridge lights flickered, power relays tripped, and the automated weapons system went offline. Alarms filled the air. The captain, realizing the radar feed was gone, ordered a manual switch to optical targeting mode. The gunners scrambled to their stations, peering through thermal sights as they tried to find whatever had hit them. Smoke from the destroyed mast drifted across the deck, blinding their view. The ship's radar and EW systems had been its shield. Now it was fighting half-blind, relying on human reflexes in chaos. But the attack wasn't over. The second drone. 30 kilometers away, the second Bober had already been launched. Its mission: deliver a disabling strike to the Corvette's hull just above the waterline. As it approached, the operator noticed something strange. The screen suddenly went white. The explosion of the first drone had created a massive heat bloom, overwhelming the thermal camera's sensors. This phenomenon, known as thermal washout, rendered the feed useless. Without a visual signal, the operator had only one choice: activate the drone's autonomous attack mode. The second Bober switched to AI guidance, relying on a preloaded 3D terrain map and last known telemetry of the target. The onboard computer began predicting the ship's movement based on its speed and turn rate. Every evasive maneuver the corvette made provided more data for the AI to refine its intercept course. The captain on the Bayern continued zigzagging, shouting orders as gunners fired sporadic bursts into the mist. But against an invisible, adaptive algorithm, human reaction time was no match. Impact. At 4:49:04, just over 4 seconds after the first explosion, the second Bober broke through the cloud of smoke and heat. On deck, sailors caught a glimpse of something small and dark darting across the waves. They opened fire with AK-74 rifles and a PKM machine gun, the flashes of their barrels reflecting in the oily mist. The drone didn't waver. It struck the hull just forward of the midsection, slightly above the waterline. The explosion punched a 2-foot-wide hole in the steel plating. The shockwave buckled nearby bulkheads, ruptured interior piping, and flooded a forward compartment. Seawater gushed in, listing the ship 10 degrees to port. For the Ukrainian team watching remotely, the transmission froze, then cut to static. Mission data confirmed 2 impacts, both objectives completed. Aftermath on the water. On board the corvette, chaos turned into triage. Sailors scrambled to seal flooded sections while the damage control crew activated pumps. The radar was gone, comms intermittent, and power to several systems cut. The ship was alive, but its combat capability was gone. Without its radar, the Buyan M could not launch its Kalibr missiles, each requiring target data from the now destroyed sensor array. What remained was a drifting, wounded vessel struggling to return to port. At 5:03 a.m., 15 minutes after the first strike, 2 Russian Su-30 fighter jets roared into the air from Belbek Air Base. They circled the bay, scanning for the source of the attack. But there was nothing to find. The mother drone had already retreated beyond range, and the low-flying attackers were gone, their mission complete. The silence that followed felt heavier than the explosions that had preceded it. The tactical message. In less than 10 minutes, a $1,000 drone system had disabled a $60 million warship. The ratio alone was staggering, but the message behind the numbers was even more profound. The era of invisible, intelligent, and affordable warfare had arrived. It wasn't firepower that won this battle, it was precision, timing, and the fusion of human ingenuity with autonomous technology. For the Ukrainian operators, the operation ended not with celebration, but with quiet acknowledgement. They had not sunk a ship, they had changed the definition of naval combat. From that moment on, every admiral, every strategist, and every engineer studying the footage of Tamriuk Bay would be forced to ask a new question. What happens when the smallest machine on the sea becomes the most dangerous? When the first rays of dawn broke over Tamriuk Bay, the smoke still lingered above the water. The sea was calm again, but the silence hid a remarkable truth. One of the most advanced warships in the Russian fleet had been disabled not by a missile, submarine, or airstrike, but by 2 drones that cost less than the price of a single military helmet. The Bayern corvette was still afloat, but its systems were crippled. The radar mast had been sheared away, its communication lines were damaged, its once powerful missile launchers now sat dormant. The ship that had once patrolled the coast as a symbol of naval strength was now limping toward port, listing slightly to one side, leaving a dark oil trail behind it. At 5:03 a.m., 2 Russian Su-30 fighters roared overhead, scanning the area for the source of the attack. They circled for 10 minutes before realizing there was nothing to find. The drones were already gone, vanished as silently as they had come. A tactical victory measured in numbers. In the hours that followed, defense analysts across Europe began piecing together what had happened. What they found defied conventional military logic. 2 drones constructed primarily from lightweight composites, commercial electronics, and open-source software had effectively neutralized a $60 million warship. The ratio of cost to effect was staggering: $1,000 of material versus tens of millions in damage, plus the operational loss of 8 Kalibr cruise missiles, each worth around $1 million. But the real impact wasn't financial, it was psychological. The event demonstrated that traditional measures of military power, tonnage, armor, and cost, no longer guaranteed dominance. The battlefield was shifting from sheer might to technological adaptability. For Ukraine, the strike was a defensive triumph. By disabling the corvette, it had removed a major launch platform that threatened civilian and infrastructure targets. For observers around the world, it was a sign that warfare had entered a new phase, one where ingenuity could replace firepower and precision could outweigh mass. The blind spot of modern navies. Naval doctrine has long centered around detection. Whoever sees first, strikes first. From the radar revolution of World War II to the sensor fusion systems of the 21st century, the entire foundation of sea combat has rested on awareness. But the Bober drones had shown what happens when that awareness collapses. When the corvette's radar was destroyed, its entire defense grid, from automated cannons to jamming systems, fell apart in seconds. The ship's weapons weren't destroyed, they were blinded. In an instant, a floating fortress became a deaf and sightless machine, unable to defend itself. This exposed a profound vulnerability in modern fleets. Advanced warships depend on layers of digital perception: radar, sonar, infrared, satellite uplinks, all interlinked and automated. When any one of those systems is compromised, the rest becomes little more than steel and circuitry waiting to fail. In the aftermath, experts coined a term for the Tamriuk Bay incident: the sensor kill. It was a new kind of warfare, not aimed at destroying ships, but at erasing their ability to perceive. Global military reaction. Within weeks, naval think tanks in London, Ankara, and Washington had begun studying the attack in detail. Simulation exercises recreated the Bober's flight path, radar signature, and attack profile. Western military journals discussed the operation under code names like Bay Phantom and the Blind Ship. For smaller nations, the implications were transformative. A new generation of affordable, stealthy drones could now threaten ships that once required billion-dollar fleets to challenge. For larger powers, it was a wake-up call. If a $60 million corvette could be neutralized by a $1,000 weapon, how safe were the frigates and destroyers, costing hundreds of millions more? It wasn't the first time asymmetric warfare had rewritten strategy. Guerrilla fighters had done it on land for centuries. But at sea, where power projection has always relied on size and cost, this was unprecedented. China, the United States, and European navies quietly accelerated research into counter-drone radar systems, low-altitude detection grids, and electromagnetic defenses. Some analysts compared the moment to the dawn of submarine warfare in the early 20th century. Disruptive, frightening, but inevitable. The age of the unmanned sea hunter had arrived. Technology, adaptation, and ethics. Yet behind the technical triumph lay deeper questions, not of capability, but of conscience. For decades, military engineers have sought precision tools to reduce collateral damage. The Bober operation embodied that goal perfectly. No crude aircraft, no indiscriminate destruction, and no civilian casualties. It was the cleanest possible military strike, a precise, disabling action that neutralized a threat without sinking a ship or taking lives. But it also highlighted the growing autonomy of AI on the battlefield. The second drone's decision to continue its mission after losing communication, guided only by onboard algorithms and predictive modeling, blurred the line between human command and machine initiative. The operator had given the order, but the final strike was made by code. This raises critical questions for future warfare. When artificial intelligence can act independently under the fog of battle, where does accountability lie? When a weapon decides the moment of impact on its own, who bears responsibility for its consequences? For now, these questions remain academic. But as autonomous technology becomes more capable, nations around the world will need to establish new frameworks, not just for legality, but for morality.
And its impact on society.
The broader
It's a
lesson.
critical moment for global collaboration.
For Ukraine, the Tamriuk
bears
Bay operation
responsibility?
was more than a tactical success. It was a statement of capability. In a war defined by disparity in resources, it proved that adaptation and creativity could balance the scales. For the rest of the world, it offered a preview of what future conflicts may look like. Silent, data-driven, and fought by machines that cost less than a family car. As one defense analyst put it, the true power of the operation wasn't in what it destroyed, but in what it revealed. That dominance now depends on information, not intimidation. The old doctrines of naval warfare, fleets meeting head-on, radar controlling the horizon, are no longer enough. The next era will be one of swarms, stealth, and autonomous precision. The Bober drone, born from necessity and ingenuity, had become a symbol of this transformation. Echoes beyond the battlefield. In the months following the strike, the story spread far beyond military circles. Engineers, students, and defense experts studied the operation as a case study in innovation under pressure. It became a testament to how modern conflict is as much about software and sensors as it is about missiles and steel. The success of the Tamriuk Bay mission also sent a subtle message to global defense industries. The future belongs to flexibility. Technologies once confined to laboratories, AI, commercial satellites, and open source mapping had combined to outthink one of the most heavily armed ships in its class. It was no longer a matter of who could build the biggest machine, but who could think fastest with the tools at hand. A new reality at sea. By the end of 2025, naval command centers worldwide had updated their protocols. Ships were ordered never to operate alone in confined waters. Radar systems were redesigned with multi-frequency redundancy. And yet, even with all those precautions, a lingering uncertainty remained. Could they ever truly defend against something that small, that cheap, and that smart? The events of Tamriuk Bay had rewritten the rules. A drone weighing less than a seagull had changed the course of military history. It proved that in modern warfare, innovation isn't a luxury, it's survival. And somewhere in the control room where the mission was flown, a silent message appeared on the operator's terminal once the feed ended, a simple confirmation blinking on the screen. Mission complete. Target disabled. The events in Tamriuk Bay revealed more than just the destruction of a warship. They exposed a turning point in the evolution of warfare itself. In the span of 10 minutes, two small drones costing less than $1,000 accomplished what once required fleets, missiles, and months of planning. They did not win through brute force, but through intelligence, innovation, and precision. This operation demonstrated that modern power is no longer measured by how much steel or firepower a nation commands, but by how effectively it adapts to new technologies. The future battlefield will not be dominated by size, but by strategy, not by the loudest weapons, but by the quietest machines. Every ship, tank, and aircraft will now have to contend with an invisible, intelligent opponent that can see farther, strike faster, and cost less. For Ukraine, this was a moment of defense ingenuity. For the rest of the world, it was a glimpse into the coming era of autonomous warfare, an era shaped by AI, satellites, and human creativity working together. At Military Worldline News, we analyze moments like this not just as battles, but as lessons. Lessons about innovation, resilience, and the balance of power in a changing world. If you want to stay informed about the latest breakthroughs in defense technology, strategy, and global security, subscribe to Military Worldline News. Join us as we continue to uncover the real stories behind the machines and minds shaping tomorrow's battlefield.